on DD India.
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. Reserve Bank of India keeps repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for a 10th time in a row. RBI Governor says share of investment in GDP reached highest levels since 2012. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Lao PDR to attend ASEAN-India Summit and East Asia Summit. North Korea to completely cut road and rail links to South Korea. Announcement heralds a further escalation in activity close to the demarcation line. Floridians flee as Hurricane Milton approaches. Category 5 storm due to hit Gulf Coast late Wednesday or early Thursday. And India to play Bangladesh in the second T20 match in New Delhi. Women's team to take on Sri Lanka in the ICC Women's T20 World Cup in Dubai. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be travelling to Lao PDR on October 10th on the invitation of Laotian Prime Minister Sonexay Siphandone. Prime Minister Modi will be on a two-day visit to attend the 21st ASEAN-India Summit and the 19th East Asia Summit. The ASEAN-India Summit will review progress of India-ASEAN relations through India's comprehensive strategic partnership and chart the future direction of the cooperation. The East Asia Summit is a forum that contributes to building an environment of strategic trust in the region. It is a platform for East Asian countries to exchange views on issues of regional importance. As India marks a decade of Act East policy, relations with ASEAN are a central pillar of the Act East policy and the Indo-Pacific vision. Meanwhile, leaders of the South Asian countries arrived in Vientiane for the 44th ASEAN Summit that began on Wednesday. Southeast Asian leaders were welcomed by Prime Minister of Laos, Sonexay Siphandone, upon their arrival. The summit will see top ASEAN leaders discuss issues like Myanmar civil war, South China Sea that dominates the region. Opening remarks by Laos Prime Minister assured ways to tackle the ongoing conflicts and other challenges faced by the group of nations.
ASEAN will continue to expand the path towards the ASEAN 2025 document that will support the build-up of the ASEAN Community Vision 2045 in order to build a stronger and resilient community for a stronger economy and increase connectivity with each other. It would also make us strong and more capable to deal with various future challenges amid the fluctuating and complex geopolitical and geo-economic climate.
In Japan, Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba dissolved the lower house of the parliament on Wednesday ahead of a snap poll on 27th of October. Ishiba's Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, has governed Japan almost uninterrupted for decades. It's almost certain to be re-elected. Ishiba replaced Fumio Kishida as the leader of the party earlier this month, whose government had suffered from record low approval ratings due to slush fund scandals that stoked public distrust in the LDP and voter discontent over rising prices.
I hereby dissolve the lower house according to Article 7 of the Japanese Constitution.
Shifting focus to Korean Peninsula, where North Korean Army has said it will completely cut off roads and railways connected to South Korea starting from Wednesday. With the announcement, the military said it will fortify areas on its side of the border. The announcement heralds a further escalation in activity close to demarcation line separating the two Koreas, which had been rare in recent years until this year. However, Pyongyang says this was a response to war exercises that have been held in South Korea, as well as frequent visits by U.S. strategic nuclear assets in the region. Seoul says North had already been installing landmines and barriers and creating wasteland along the heavily militarized border for months this year. Meanwhile, North Korea held a session of its Supreme People's Assembly this week, although there was no mention on whether it had officially changed its stance on unification between the Koreas. The latest Supreme People's Assembly session, that was held from October 7th to 8th, amended the constitution to change the working and voting age of people, passed new laws on industry and economy, and named No Kwang-chol as the defense minister. There have been widespread expectations that rubber stamp parliament would remove references in the constitution on unification between the two Koreas, in line with the comments in a speech by leader Kim Jong-un in January. Kim did not appear on the list of attendees. Mozambique votes in a general election highly likely to deliver victory to the ruling party Frelimo. Incumbent President Filipe Nyusi cast his ballot in Maputo. As polls opened on Wednesday, over 17 million registered voters will cast their ballots today. Counting will begin immediately after polls close at 6 p.m. local time. Nyusi from the ruling Frelimo party is stepping down after serving 2 terms. 4 candidates, including Frelimo's Daniel Chapo, Osufo Mamad of the main opposition party, and the Mozambican National Resistance Lutero Simango of the Mozambique Democratic Movement, and independent candidate Venancio Mondlane are in the presidential race. Frelimo has governed the South African nation since 1975. As U.S. elections are just a few weeks ahead, a recent opinion poll says Kamala Harris is ahead of Donald Trump. The debate in the mind of voters is a strong leader versus change leader. A poll from Siena College, the New York Times, on Tuesday highlighted the deadlock, finding Harris ahead of a Republican rival by 49% to 46%. However, the new poll gave Trump the edge on who is the stronger leader, but crucially revealed that the registered voters see Harris as the change candidate. Presenting herself as a change maker, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris said that America is always for expansion of individual rights, and her proposal for right to abortion for women will be a step in that direction.
Hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court to do exactly what they did, take away the right of an individual to make decisions about their own body. Like, I ask people to take a step back. You have basically now a system that says you as an individual do not have the right to make a decision about your own body. The government has the right to make that decision for you. The strength of America includes that we have been committed as Americans, it's part of our spirit, to the expansion of rights.
Meanwhile, U.S. state of Florida is bracing for another deadly storm. Now categorized at level 5, Hurricane Milton is explosively developing into a major storm. Already pounding Mexico beaches, Milton is all set to make landfall in Florida on Wednesday. More in this report.
Mandatory evacuation sirens go off in Reddington shores as Hurricane Milton barrels towards the U.S. state of Florida. Hurricane Milton will make a landfall at Florida's battered Gulf Coast as an enormous Category 5 storm. It has already triggered massive traffic jams due to the exodus. First time in over a century, Tampa Bay will be hit by a hurricane, and that too has been dubbed as an extremely dangerous storm. Officials have ordered over 1 million people to flee before it makes landfall late Wednesday or early Thursday. While the World Meteorological Organization has forecast fluctuating strength categories, the dangers prevail.
Milton, according to the latest forecasts from the U.S. National Hurricane Center, will likely make landfall in Florida Wednesday night, local time. The maximum sustained winds at the moment are 250 kilometers an hour, and the National Hurricane Center is saying that, fluctuations in the strength are likely, but whatever, regardless, Milton, and I quote, is forecast to remain an extremely dangerous hurricane through landfall in Florida.
US President Joe Biden has urged those who have been ordered to leave to evacuate now.
Most importantly, I've urged everyone currently located in Hurricane Milton's path to listen to local officials and follow safety instructions. You all have been reporting on the highways, shoulders being opened, everybody's heading out. And if you're under evacuation orders, you should evacuate now. You should have already evacuated. It's a matter of life and death, and that's not hyperbole. It's a matter of life and death.
Hurricane Milton threatens a stretch of Florida's densely populated west coast that is still reeling from the devastating Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. Storefronts in Florida's Front Myers are all boarded up and protected with barriers as many residents seek shelter away from their homes before the landfall. Antara Sinha for DD India.
The state of Florida in the U.S. braces for landfall of Milton. A study by World Weather Attribution has said that Hurricane Helene's rain and strong winds were made even more intense by climate change.
Hurricane Helene's torrential rain and powerful winds were made about 10% more intense due to climate change, according to a study published Wednesday by the World Weather Attribution Group. Although a 10% increase might seem relatively small, that small change in the hazard really leads to a big change in impacts and damage. Study focused on 3 aspects of Hurricane Helene: precipitation, winds, and the water temperature of the Gulf of Mexico. All aspects of Helene were amplified by climate change to different degrees. The study found precipitation had increased by 10% because of global warming. Scientists determined Helene's winds were 11% stronger as a result of climate change. Lastly, the researchers examined the water temperature in the Gulf of Mexico, finding it was around 2 degrees Celsius above normal. Warmer oceans release more water vapor, providing more energy for storms as they form. This study also found that fossil fuels have made hurricanes like Helene 2.5 times more likely to occur. Helene made landfall in northwestern Florida on September 26 as a Category 4 hurricane with winds up to 225 kilometers per hour. The experts have now warned that if humans continue to burn fossil fuels, the United States will face even more destructive hurricanes. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. UN chief appeals for ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. Russia's Bryansk region declares state of emergency. And 18-year-old Nepali mountaineer makes record for being the youngest person to climb all 14 of world's 8,000-meter peaks.
This weekend on Defense Dynamic, we will take you on a thrilling ride with most exciting aerial display by the Indian Air Force held at Chennai, celebrating their 92nd anniversary. As the tensions rise in West Asia, we look at the options available with both Israel and Iran. We will tell you how US forces are deployed in this volatile region and also how will this emerging situation likely to impact upon India. We will talk about Israeli Iron Dome system and discuss India's air defense shield. All this on Defense Dynamics this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. The Israel-Hamas conflict is not over yet, but the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah has brought West Asia onto the brink. On Tuesday, UN Chief Antonio Guterres made a strong appeal for an immediate ceasefire in both Gaza and Lebanon during a presser at the UN headquarters.
We cannot and will not give up on our calls for an immediate ceasefire both in Gaza and Lebanon, the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, and the immediate life-saving aid to all those who desperately need it.
Urging the Lebanese people to oust Hezbollah in an address directed at them, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu has said this could help Lebanon avoid the destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza.
You have an opportunity that hasn't existed in decades. An opportunity to take care of the future of your children and grandchildren. You have an opportunity to save Lebanon before it falls into the abyss of a long war that will lead to destruction and suffering like we see in Gaza.
Reacting to Hezbollah's call for a ceasefire on Tuesday, United States indicated that the militant group is on the defensive.
For a year, you had the world calling for this ceasefire. You had Hezbollah refusing to agree to one. And now that Hezbollah is on the back foot and is getting battered, suddenly they've changed their tune and want a ceasefire. I think it's not surprising given the situation they find themselves in.
In a bid to save their nationals from the raging Israel-Hezbollah conflict, countries are leading massive evacuations from Lebanon. On Tuesday, 67 Chilean citizens and their families, along with the Peruvian and Argentine citizens, were evacuated. They landed in Chile. On the battlefield, Hezbollah militants targeted Israeli soldiers near the Lebanese border village of Labune with artillery shells and rockets on Wednesday. And speaking on recent Israeli strikes on Hezbollah infrastructure, Israeli military spokesperson said on Tuesday that 50 Hezbollah operatives have been killed.
Until now, we can confirm that in the strikes, more than 50 terrorists, among them are 6 senior commanders. This is a moral strike, operational and hard for the Hezbollah terrorists.
Moving on, authorities in Russia's West Bryansk region declared a state of emergency on Wednesday. Russia's state news agency TASS reported that the emergency was declared in the region following detonation of explosive materials. Since August, Russian forces have been actively engaged in efforts to push Ukrainian troops from the area. Since August, the Bryansk region borders Belarus, Ukraine and Russia's Kursk region and is a focal point of conflict with Ukrainian forces. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the country needed to secure and deploy advanced missiles and to achieve faster results with them on battlefield. He said a meeting with top commanders had been devoted to the development of domestic weapons supplies, including drones, electronic warfare, and above all, deploying missiles that would reap rapid benefits in the battlefield. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has said Ukraine cannot win the war with Russia on the battlefield, adding that dialogue and a ceasefire were needed to save lives. Orbán was speaking at a press briefing in Strasbourg on Tuesday.
The Hungarian intention is focusing on to manage a ceasefire as soon as possible. A ceasefire. Because we are convinced that you cannot win that war on the battlefield. Simply you cannot. That's our opinion. So therefore, if you cannot win on the battlefield, you have to communicate, you have to negotiate, you have to have a ceasefire, and you have to save the lives.
Meanwhile, the new NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Ukraine could be facing its toughest winter since the conflict.
NATO must and will do more to help Ukraine. Russia continues to carry out massive strikes against Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure. Ukraine could be facing its toughest winter since the full-scale invasion began.
This year, October 9th, marks the 84th birth anniversary of legendary English singer-songwriter John Lennon. Hailing from Liverpool, Lennon went on to become a big name in the world of music, whether it was as a member of the Beatles or as a solo artist. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us more.
Arguably the greatest songwriter of his generation, John Lennon is a pivotal figure in the discussion of rock and roll music. Born on October 9, 1940 in Liverpool, England, Lennon showed a talent for music from a young age. He formed the band The Quarrymen in 1956, which evolved into the Beatles in 1960. During one of their performances, he met Paul McCartney and together they became one of history's most celebrated songwriting duos. With Lennon, McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr as the main lineup, the Beatles released their first single, Love Me Do, in 1962, followed by their debut album, Please Please Me, in 1963. The Fab Four gained global recognition after their appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on February 9, 1964, watched by a record 73 million viewers. They continue to produce hits with albums like Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and Abbey Road. After the Beatles disbanded in 1970, Lennon launched a successful solo career while also becoming a prominent peace activist. Tragically, his life was cut short at the age of 40 when he was assassinated in New York on December 8, 1980. Nevertheless, his music and legacy continue to inspire generations of musicians, and his songs remain beloved by fans around the world. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for DD India.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Brazilian Supreme Court has authorized X to resume its services in the country as of Tuesday. The decision follows the social media platform's reversal as it began complying with court ruling that billionaire owner Elon Musk had previously vowed to contest. Mexican security leaders, including Defense Secretary and Public Security Secretary, visited a cartel stronghold in Sinaloa. The area was plagued by violent gang conflicts, resulting in approximately 150 fatalities over the past month. Students at Argentina's largest public university took their lessons to the streets to protest against severe cuts to public university funding proposed by President Javier Milei administration. Students protest against the law passed by Congress several weeks ago to secure university funding amidst an economic crisis. The cuts have adversely affected the university, one of the top 100 worldwide. Nima Rinji Sherpa, 18-year-old Nepali mountaineer, broke the record for being the youngest person to summit all 14 of the world's 8,000-plus meter peaks on Wednesday, reaching the summit of the Shisha Pangma in Tibet. The World Health Organization, WHO, has declared that India has successfully eliminated trachoma. With the milestone achievement, India has become the third country in Southeast Asia to do so. WHO Regional Director announced the news in Regional Committee meeting held in New Delhi on Tuesday. Trachoma has been listed as neglected tropical disease by WHO. It was one of the main causes of blindness during 1950s and 60s in the country. To tackle the disease, National Trachoma Control Program was launched in 1963. The control efforts were integrated into India's National Program for Control of Blindness. India was declared free from infective trachoma in 2017. However, surveillance was still carried for trachoma cases at pan-India level from 2019 onwards till now, 2024. The pharmaceutical industry in India is currently valued at about $41 billion, expected to reach $65 billion by the end of 2024. Indian pharma and life sciences sector is on the uptrend. Irrespective of the global slowdown, the 6th Pharma Summit celebrates the success the sector has enjoyed to deliberate on the road ahead in terms of ideas. DD India's Anil Thomas brings us more.
The Pharma and Life Sciences Summit focuses on groundbreaking advancements in biotechnology, innovations, life sciences, and related fields. The deliberations at the summit emphasize the integration of technology and research in shaping the future of life sciences, along with health, making it appealing to a wide range of professionals and stakeholders in the country.
Even though there is a general slowdown in exports globally, the good news is that Indian pharmaceuticals, biotech, and bulk drug exports have grown double-digit over the last year, and in the first 4 months of this year, these exports have now become the 4th largest export item merchandise export item for the Indian economy.
Life sciences industry is at its edge, where E is for efficiency, D for democratic dividend, G is for government policy, and E for economies of scale. The need now is to focus on twin tech transition for sustainable development and look at industrialization of biology in the next 25 years.
Twin tech transition for sustainable development is probably the most model that will work actually. And these twin tech transitions are digital tech and the green tech actually. The two key aspects that one needs to talk about is how we utilize both these aspects to be able to convert India into a Viksit Bharat in 25 years' time.
Indian drug policies introduced by the government are conducive to the growth of the sector. However, more needs to be done to reduce compliance burden and to do more value-added work.
There was a big concern from industry on the time being taken in issuing the export NOCs. And the data was showing that anywhere from 20 days to 60 days was actually being taken. We converted them into online process. And the data month on month since we did it is that you'll be surprised to hear that from 20 to 60 days, we have brought down to less than 3 days.
The country should now move from being not only the largest market for diagnostics, but also the biggest creator of technologies in the sector. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
The Central Drug Standards Control Organization has clarified that drug alert issued by the country's drug regulator was misinterpretation of data. The report on the 20th of every month listed 50 products as not of standard quality. The list issued by CDSCO in August includes vitamin C tablets, Shalcal, vitamin B complex, vitamin C soft gels, Pandi pharmaceutical tablets, anti-diabetic drug, glimepiride, and the high blood pressure medication, among others.
The 50 notifications which we bring almost every month on 20th of every month, they are not fake medicines. You have to understand, they were not of standard quality medicines, they were not fake medicines. So there is a difference between the two. Only 5 of them were spurious in our terminology, which you can talk as fake. So the one picture which is being given is that there were 50 fake medicines which we banned. That was completely wrong.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. We talk about the implications of RBI repo rate announcements. And take you closer to Navratri festivities. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Lao PDR to attend ASEAN-India Summit and East Asia Summit. North Korea to completely cut road-rail links to South Korea. Announcement heralds further escalation in activity close to the demarcation line. Floridians flee as Hurricane Milton approaches. Category 5 storm due to hit Gulf Coast late Wednesday or early Thursday. The Reserve Bank of India on Wednesday kept the repo rate unchanged at 6.5% for a 10th time in a row. RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das said while announcing the monetary policy statement, the decision was taken with a 5-1 majority. The Monetary Policy Committee decided to change the stance of the monetary policy to neutral from withdrawal of accommodation.
After assessing the evolving macroeconomic and financial conditions and the outlook, the MPC decided by a majority of 5 out of 6 members to keep the policy repo rate unchanged at 6.5%. Consequently, the standing deposit facility, that is the SDF rate, remains at 6.25%, and the marginal standing facility, that is the MSF rate and the bank rate, they stand at 6.75%.
RBI Governor said that the real GDP grew by 6.7% in the first quarter of this financial year, 2024-25. The share of investment in GDP reached its highest level since 2012-13.
Inflation is softening, supported by lower energy prices. Growing divergence in inflation growth dynamics across countries has resulted in varying monetary policy responses. Real GDP grew by 6.7% in the first quarter of this financial year, that is 24-25. The share of investment in GDP reached its highest level since 2012-13. Government expenditure, on the other hand, contracted during the first quarter.
And after the announcement by RBI Governor Shaktikant Das on the unchanged repo rate, Indian benchmark equity indices BSE, Sensex and Nifty 50 were higher on Wednesday. The RBI's monetary policy announcement, which came during the trading session, was met with positive sentiment. At 2 p.m. local time, BSE Sensex was up 252 points, while Nifty 50 was up 98 points. And DD India correspondent Shyama Mishra joins us live from Mumbai. Shyama, if you could take us through the fine print of the announcements.
Well, Shubhendu, for starters, it was on the expected lines that the governor or the MPC will not be making any changes. And here it is, there is no changes, and this is the 10th consecutive time. However, one change that the governor has made is by switching the animal of inflation. Earlier, it used to be elephant. Now it's been switched to the horse. Maybe because it's not coming in control. We have Sanjay Mariwala with us. He is the president of Indian Merchant Chamber, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sir, like I mentioned, inflation is a big headache for Reserve Bank of India, and this time around also nothing has been changed except for the stance, which has been to neutral. How do you see it, and what would you say were the takeaways from this?
So this is a realistic scenario. We need to deal with it. I believe the concern that the RBI governor and the RBI board has expressed is genuine. We have to respect it, and I believe that the decisions taken have been in the best interest for both the country as well as the control over the inflation that they need to exercise. I think the inflation is certainly, as he has said, a horse that is running away. We need to bring it under control. I think it's the new crops in the winter crops will start giving better results. Hopefully that will give us a slowdown on the food inflation. Food inflation is the biggest concern today for the country, and I think it affects the common man. Since that affects the common man, I think taming the inflation is a requirement. So supply constraint is a necessity. Monetary supply has to be constrained to some extent, which is why maintaining interest costs at the current levels is a wise decision, in my opinion. While we would all like a lower interest regime, I don't think that's going to be the sensible decision to make for the country.
Okay, but do you see in near future that happening?
It's likely that I think in Q4 we can see an improvement. Maybe in the January declaration things will look better. I suspect that's because it will also clear up some scenarios on the geopolitical situation. I think that's also uncertain. There are some challenges right now as we see in the Middle East. I think there is going to be also some pressure on the oil prices. I think putting all those together, it's better to be conservative than to be liberal.
Yeah, correct. Thank you very much. So that was Sanjay Mariwala, and like he was mentioning that it is very important to tame this horse, and even the governor, he has been time and again been mentioning that RBI is monitoring inflation very closely, and the need of the hour is sustained inflation coming into the comfortable range, and going forward, like sir was also mentioning, it is also likely that the next 2 months that the data would be coming, it will be elevated, and governor has also expressed his concern on that. But going forward with the new crops coming in, we might witness some ease in inflation. Over to
Shama there, thanks very much for joining us with those updates from Mumbai. Staying with the story, let's now connect with Professor Ashwini Mahajan, who's an economic analyst. Good afternoon and welcome, sir. Now, if you could help us simplify the RBI's decision to keep the repo rate unchanged, what does it also say about the state of the Indian economy?
You see, so far as the state of Indian economy is concerned, it's going well. The only concern is of inflation. But there are two schools of thoughts in this case. One school of thought says that this food inflation has to be kept aside, and we should consider only the non-food inflation. And in fact, the economic survey also talks about the same. But there has been a stance on the part of the RBI to continue with the inclusion of food inflation in the overall food outcome, inflation outcome. And in this case, RBI is right to when they don't include when they include food inflation in the overall inflation, then obviously this is a concern. Calling it horse or elephant, it doesn't make any much of a difference. But the issue is that the major issue is of growth, and therefore I think the RBI has taken a right decision in changing the stance from accommodative to neutral stance, and this paves the way for the future reduction in the policy rate of interest. And I think in the next quarter, the RBI may think of reducing the rate of interest, because though RBI says that the higher rate of interest is not coming in way of our development, our growth, but definitely if we are aspiring to have a higher rate of growth, acceleration in the rate of growth, we must reduce the policy rate of interest. But for the time being, the concerns of RBI are there. They may be right or wrong, but they have expressed this concern, and we have to, as a matter of fact, RBI is the major decision maker in this case. We have to accept the decision.
And Professor Mahajan, if we were to look at these developments in a wider context, say for instance, US Fed cut policy rates by 50 basis points last month. RBI keeps the rates unchanged. How do we understand these two decisions in the current geopolitics?
You see, what is happening in the US is different from from our scenario, therefore when US is raising Fed rate, that is in the benefit of Indian economy, because that would in a way help us stabilizing our economy. And so far as the Indian repo rate is concerned, we should not be guided by what US is doing in their own country, because they are facing a different kind of situation. They are facing the inflation, and our inflation is definitely high, but it is definitely under check. It is, but US is maybe right in their own way to keep the Fed rate high.
Right. Professor Mahajan, also the policy continuity that we are witnessing with the 10th time the policy rates have remained unchanged. Again, looking at the external factors, especially the major conflicts that are underway and the economic implications of those conflicts, how are those also being taken into account in making the decision that has been made by RBI, according to you?
Yeah, in fact, more than food inflation, I think it is the conflicts which are guiding more to the RBI, because we know that whenever there are conflicts, there are disturbance in the global scenario, we face the problem of higher input prices, and the supply chains are also disturbed, and that also causes uh, pushing the prices up. And therefore, the RBI is trying to be cautious, though they understand that keeping the rate of interest lower or bringing them lower to a low level, that can be beneficial for the economy. But looking at the overall global scenario and also the domestic food inflation, they are perhaps cautious, and therefore they have only changed the stance rather than the rate of interest.
Right, and finally, Professor Mahajan, what can you tell us about what do the indicators say about the road ahead for Indian economy in terms of opportunities and challenges? You mentioned inflation. We talked about external challenges as well. Any other point that you'd like to add to that, sir?
In fact, the rate of interest is only one factor, and I believe Indian economy is going the right way. Atmanirbhar Bharat policy is doing well. And the overall global scenario is also China plus one policy being adopted by all the developed countries of the world. And therefore, we have a greater chance of establishing new ventures in our economy. And international financial institutions are helping us to bring more and more business to India, more and more factories, more and more production to India, so that we can counter China factor, and the global forces also, they want India to be an alternative source from where they can buy their requirements. Therefore, Indian economy is definitely on the right path, and we believe that obviously for so many years the Indian economy is maintaining its position of the largest growing economy of the world. And out of all the large economies, we are the fastest growing economy of the world. And therefore, this is going to continue. And we don't see any competitor to India. Okay. Even China is not able to keep the pace.
Okay. Professor Ashwini Mahajan, thank you very much for joining us on DD India News Hour, sharing your perspective. Moving on, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi virtually laid the foundation stone of various development projects in Maharashtra worth over 7,600 crore rupees. The projects whose foundation stones were laid include the upgradation of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar International Airport in Nagpur, the new integrated terminal building at Shirdi Airport. Prime Minister Modi launched the operationalization of 10 government medical colleges in Maharashtra. PM also inaugurated Indian Institute of Skills, Mumbai and Vidya Samiksha Kendra of Maharashtra.
पिछले 10 वर्ष में हमने देश के विकास के लिए आधुनिक इंफ्रा बनाने का एक महायज्ञ शुरू किया है। आज हम सिर्फ बिल्डिंग नहीं बना रहे हैं, हम एक स्वस्थ और समृद्ध महाराष्ट्र की नींव रख रहे हैं। एक साथ 10 नए सरकारी मेडिकल कॉलेजों की शुरुआत, ये केवल 10 नए संस्थानों को तैयार करना नहीं है, ये लाखों लोगों के जीवन को बेहतर बनाने का महायज्ञ है।
After a resounding victory in the state of Haryana, Bharatiya Janata Party is all set to form government for the third consecutive time. In an exclusive conversation with BJP Shakti Rani Sharma, who secured a win by a margin of some 10,833 votes from the Kalka constituency, Sharma shared her joy over the results and outlined her roadmap for the future.
After thumping victory in the Haryana Assembly elections, the Bharatiya Janata Party is all set for its hat-trick in the state. And to talk more, I have with me Shakti Rani Sharma, who won from the Kalka constituency assembly and won by a huge margin of around 10,800 votes.
It's a great feeling because the people believed in what I said,
And I am very thankful to the people of Kalka that they trusted in me.
Talking about the road ahead, how do you see the road ahead now? You've won from this constituency, and BJP also promised many things in its manifesto for every sector, including sport, women empowerment, and farmers.
Definitely, we will work on all our promises which we made, and I am very categorically. I told my people through my meetings that whatever I said, I am committed to that, and I will fulfill all those promises which I made to them, the development of this area and empowerment of the women as well, and as well jobs for the jobless.
Thank you so much.
We now take you live to Ministry of External Affairs press briefing in New Delhi.
Summit and East Asia Summit. We also joined on the dais by Joint Secretary who looks after ASEAN in the Ministry of External Affairs, Srimati Paramita Tripathi. With that, I invite Secretary Sir to make his opening remarks. So over to you.
Thank you, Randeep. As Randeep mentioned, Prime Minister will be travelling to Vientiane in Lao PDR for the 21st ASEAN-India Summit and the 19th East Asia Summit. At the invitation of His Excellency Prime Minister Sifandon of Lao PDR, the visit will be over 10th and 11th of October. We attach great significance to all ASEAN-related mechanisms. This will be Prime Minister's 10th attendance at a ASEAN-India Summit, and you will recall that even in 2023, just before he was to host the G20 Summit, he made the effort to attend the ASEAN-India Summit in Jakarta. That shows the commitment that we have to the ASEAN-related mechanisms. And the significance of this particular summit will be that it is the 10th anniversary of Prime Minister's Act East policy. Prime Minister will, along with other heads of state and government of ASEAN countries, review the progress in the relations between India and ASEAN over this time, and they will chart the future direction of our relationship. We will be expressing our support for the chair's theme, which is connectivity and resilience. Now, as you know, connectivity is a very important pillar of our engagement with ASEAN. As much as 20% of the Indian diaspora worldwide lives in ASEAN countries. We have direct flights with 7 ASEAN countries, and we expect that perhaps before the end of the year we will have direct connectivity with flight connectivity with 2 more ASEAN countries. And ASEAN is also amongst our top trade and investment partners of India, and therefore the importance of connectivity and relationship with ASEAN. In terms of resilience, in terms of disaster resilience, for example, India has been one of the first responders in disaster occurrences in the region, starting from the Indian Ocean tsunami to the Typhoon Yagi earlier this month or last month, and recently we airlifted assistance to both Vietnam and Laos, as well as to Myanmar in the wake of the typhoon. Regarding resilience, also building resilient supply chain is an important objective for India with ASEAN countries, and our review of the ASEAN-India trade in goods is ongoing, and that is something that will feed into supply chain resilience with these countries. India has many cooperative activities with ASEAN countries. We have 4 funds. One is the ASEAN-India Fund, the ASEAN-India Green Fund, the ASEAN-India Science and Technology Development Fund, and last year Prime Minister announced the ASEAN-India Fund for the Digital Future. So we have a number of activities lined up on all these funds, through which we undertake capacity building, we offer scholarships, we build collaborative R&D, We build people-to-people connects, and we cover many areas such as IT, space, health, etc. Moving on to the East Asia Summit. The East Asia Summit, as you know, encompasses the 10 ASEAN countries and 8 partners: Australia, China, India, Japan, ROK, New Zealand, Russia, and the United States. And Timor-Leste will also be a partner as an observer. This mechanism has been in existence since 2005, and it is to build strategic trust in the region, promote peace and stability and prosperity for the region. In the East Asia Summit, the Prime Minister announced the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative in the 14th EAS Summit in 2019, and since then we have built convergences with the ASEAN's own outlook for the Indo-Pacific, and we work closely with ASEAN countries on this. 3 ASEAN countries, Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore, and 3 East Asia partners, the United States, Australia, and Japan, are our partners in the IPOI. Incidentally, the revival of the Nalanda University is also an East Asia Summit initiative, and as you know, Prime Minister inaugurated the new campus of Nalanda University very recently. Bilaterally, Prime Minister will have a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Lao PDR. We have very close, friendly and historical and civilizational relations with Lao PDR. That includes a whole host of different areas of cooperation, including restoration of archaeological sites, capacity building, IT. We have also undertaken quick impact projects. We have undertaken transmission line projects, power projects, a whole host of different areas of bilateral cooperation. There will also be other bilateral meetings with some of the countries who will be attending the East Asia Summit, and now if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Okay. Ayushi?
Sir, good afternoon. This is Ayushi Agarwal from ANI. So you mentioned that PM Modi is going to have other bilaterals as well, if you can tell us. And is there any meeting expected with the Chinese Premier?
Siddhant?
Sir, Siddhant from WION. Sir, you mentioned about 10 years of Act East policy of Modi government. So if you can talk about the impact and of course how it has strengthened the relationship between India and ASEAN grouping. And my second question is on the cultural aspect. We saw earlier this year when EM travel, a stamp was released when it comes to Ramayana. So is anything, any linkages we are looking at when it comes to the cultural linkages between India and Southeast Asia?
Question, sir. Yeshi?
This is Yeshi Seli from the New Indian Express. Is Myanmar going to take part in this upcoming meet?
Respond to them. As is normal and usual on the margins of international conferences and meetings, Prime Minister will have bilateral meetings with a number of leaders. These are all in the works, and you will get to hear of them as they happen. Regarding 10 years of Act East policy, these would be too numerous to recount here. There have been so many interactions, so much of bilateral cooperation, and so many different facets of the relationship that have grown unrecognizably today from what they were 10 years ago. But let me just say that there's been a qualitative and transformative development in our relations, both with the ASEAN region and with the larger region, which includes in the Act East policy, which is ROK, with Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Island countries, with Japan. So this includes both high-level visits, and you have seen even in the last 3 or 4 months how many high-level visits there have been between our two countries. And in each of those high-level visits, there has been real content in a future-looking, forward-looking way. Prime Minister himself has visited Singapore and Brunei. We have had incoming visits from the Prime Ministers of Vietnam and Malaysia. We had President going to Timor-Leste, Fiji and New Zealand. We have had External Affairs Ministers visits also to many places. I myself have done Foreign Office consultations with both Philippines and Indonesia. So this is a ongoing and very intense engagement with the entire region. Regarding linkages with, even during this visit, you will see some evidences of what we are doing in terms of our civilizational connect with Lao PDR. You will see that there are some projects that we are undertaking which restores, ancient linkages between our two countries. But this is also an ongoing thing in both Cambodia, in Vietnam, in Lao PDR, and all across the region. As far as Myanmar is taking part, yes, Myanmar will be represented at this summit.
You had a question? Sir, Shudhir from Bloomberg, sir. If you could give us an understanding whether the Prime Minister is going to discuss Myanmar and the situation there with other global leaders, and if so, what exactly would be, the discussion around on Myanmar?
So on Myanmar, of course, in the context of the East Asia Summit, this will come up. We expect, because it has come up at the level of senior officials as well as foreign ministers, so we expect that it will also be discussed. Our position is very supportive of the 5-point consensus of ASEAN. We support the work of the special envoy of ASEAN, who has been in contact with us. And our basic position, which we have consistently held, is that dialogue is the only way out, violence is no solution, and we encourage all parties to sit down and discuss issues between them.
Keshav.
Good afternoon, Secretary. My question regarding, so last year during this Keshav from the Print, last year during the Prime Minister's visit to the East Asia Summit, he made a 12-point proposal, of which connectivity, digital infrastructure, multiple parts to this. So could you give us a sense of, whether the proposal, what are the policy actions that would be discussed as a part of this? And also a little bit on the connectivity aspect related to Myanmar, whether the trilateral highway, its completion, whether that's also a sense as a part of this for connectivity with ASEAN.
We have a question there. Yeah.
I'm Arunesh from ANI. My question is, during Prime Minister's visit, will the issue of Indians getting due to Cambodia on pretext of fake jobs, will that issue also come up during his visit?
Mm-hmm.
On the 12-point proposals, you will see in terms of the outcomes that will be announced after the ASEAN-India summit that will happen tomorrow, you will see how the action points that emanate from it feed into the 12-point proposals that Prime Minister had announced last year. So I don't want to preclude that, so you will definitely get to hear about it. I can assure you that we have a very rich list of deliverables between India and ASEAN. On the trilateral highway, yes, definitely, connectivity is it's a very important element of our connectivity with ASEAN countries. Thailand is very keen, as keen as us, that this is completed at the earliest. Myanmar is also very keen that we operationalize this at the earliest. So it is something that will be discussed and will come up in our interventions. As regards fake jobs, this is an issue which we have been taking up with countries concerned. External Affairs Minister has also in the past been taking it up, and we have had positive responses from the countries involved. Even as recently as last week, we had a large batch of about 65 people who were rescued from Cambodia. So this is an ongoing discussion that we are having with the countries, and we are seeing positive results from it.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. Pia with the Print. A spokesperson from the Thailand Foreign Ministry recently said that the political solution to Myanmar is necessary and that Thailand may in fact float its own plan to resolve the crisis at the upcoming summit. So my question is, can we expect to understand that the 5-point consensus is no longer being discussed seriously? Would you say it's basically dead in the water at this point? Thank you.
Okay, Abhishek.
Hi sir, Abhishek Chalsat, I'm independent journalist. My question is regarding this India-ASEAN summit. Will Prime Minister be also talking about digital public infrastructure, especially in digital area, because India has several digital DPI agreement with several countries in the region, but will it also be raised at the level of India-ASEAN grouping?
Yeshi.
This is Yeshi Seli again. About Myanmar, we are talking about the trilateral connectivity. What about the Kalatan multimodal transit project? Are you going to discuss that, since you said that Myanmar is taking part?
Pranay.
सर प्रणय उपाध्याय फ्रॉम अमर उजाला। मेरा सवाल इस चीज़ को लेकर है कि हाल ही में दक्षिण पूर्व एशिया के इलाके के अंदर साइबर क्राइम एक बहुत बड़ी चुनौती के तौर पर उभरा है और हाल ही में यूएन की रिपोर्ट ने भी कहा है कि साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में एक बड़ा चैलेंज है। तो हमारी इस
इन साइबर क्राइम कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग इन फोरेंसिक्स फॉर साइबर क्राइम, ये सब मुद्दे हमारे देशों, आसियान और इंडियन देशों के बीच में डिस्कशन हुए हैं। कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग मेजर्स हमने किए हैं, तो ये ज़रूर एक अहम सब्जेक्ट है।
हमारा कोई सजेशन है, प्रपोजल है कि आसियान इसके लिए कोई एक फ्रेमवर्क बनाए?
ऐसे कोई इनिशिएटिव अभी आया नहीं है आसियान की तरफ से, बिकॉज एसेंशियली हम तो एज अ पार्टनर ऑफ आसियान कंट्रीज वी असिस्ट देम इन capacity building or in bilateral cooperation in how to address these issues. उनके तरफ से if they wish to create some mechanism by which they cooperate among themselves, तो वो उनका मामला है, हम उनको encourage कर सकते हैं, but ये essentially उन्हीं का decision है। But bilaterally हर एक देश के साथ जिसके साथ हमारे इंडियंस ऐसे स्थिति में आए हैं जो वहाँ पे स्कैमस्टर्स से प्रभावित होकर वहाँ पे गए हैं, तो हर एक देश के साथ हमारा बायलैटरली मैकेनिज्म है टू रेस्क्यू दोज इंडियंस।
If we do not have any more questions, then we come to the close of this session. Please stay tuned. The visit begins tomorrow. Thank you very much for your presence.
That was the MEA press conference on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's upcoming visit to Lao PDR. The focus would be Prime Minister's participation in the ASEAN-India summit, also East Asia summit. The MEA press briefing also spoke about the key focus areas of connectivity and strategic ties between India and the region. It's been also 10 years of the Act East policy, and it is expected to be taken forward during Prime Minister's visit. And with those updates, we conclude the show. Namaskar.